I can remember going to Detroit one time.
As soon as I see the Detroit border, I'm starting to sweat.
We got stopped at the Ambassador Bridge.
We get pulled over, we get asked to come in and inspected.
Then they started going through all our stuff, and we're standing outside having a cigarette, and we hear the guy go, "Stop them, they got guns."
Just as I was about to get inspected,
because of course Scott had his holsters with his guns, that toy guns that he carried.
Scott had a starter's pistol. They thought it was a real pistol, and we're crossing the border.
And they hauled us in. I think they were going to give Mark Scott a cavity search. I don't think it got that far, but
there's a few things I'm not going to mention for legal purposes.
And they turned us away. We went to the tunnel and we tried to get across, and they wouldn't let us through. So we went back to the bridge, and they finally told us that we'd never get back in the country again if we didn't go home.
Couldn't do the show. Boo-hoo.
What's the Poop magazine was one of several local fanzines that would spring up. They were great to promote the bands and to keep the subculture banner waving. And they used the same philosophy to printing fanzines as they did putting together bands and learning to play instruments. They did it themselves.
First thing you know, we're interviewing Deja Voodoo that night. We're taking pictures of them, and first thing you know, there's an issue out with Deja Voodoo in it.
Our first two issues are pretty sad. Pretty sad looking. Real do-it-yourself efforts. 9.5 years we did them. We went from issue 5 to issue 22.
We went with surf and rockabilly, we covered wrestling. Everything that was a little bit like B-movie type thing, a little bit off the beaten track. And we went in that direction instead of following what a lot of the local bands were doing. We wrote about what we liked. That's the whole idea of a fanzine. It's not what other people want to read about, it's why we do it. We didn't make any money at it, that's for sure. We lost a small fortune, basically.
In the summer of 1984, it became apparent that the punks were still not accepted into the mainstream, and their attire was problematic for police. The London Free Press reported that Scott Bentley had been charged with carrying a concealed weapon. His studded leather bracelets were deemed dangerous.
Charged me with possession of prohibited weapon, which was a spiked wristband, and it took 1.5 years, but it finally got thrown out of court.
For you. Well, every day I see it like it's still for food. Don't even think 2 times a week, and I know that makes a root.
To many, it's ironic that conservative London led to the birth of such a potent punk scene. Others consider it natural that conservatism led to anger, alienation, and a mistrust of the mainstream. But as we look around, we realize the toll and notice that some of the original punks have fallen, many before their time, leaving only questions and memories.
I mean, everybody comes to a fork in the road, and you have to decide which way am I going to go at that fork. And you know, so many of the people I know have chosen the wrong way, and that makes me sad.
Keith Whitaker's dead. Keith was pretty excessive with the drinking and smoking. It was really like a shocker. Like, it's something you just didn't expect. But I think Rooster just got too caught up in it. And it was really a sad thing. And he was irreplaceable. He could have played in any band on this planet. He was that good. I think back then people thought, you know, there could be a nuclear war tomorrow, so like, who gives a let's go and do it?
Just a way to relieve the stress and the frustrations of, you know, working in dead-end jobs in factories or working in a restaurant, you know, picking up other people's garbage and that kind of thing. It was a real release.
People will go down that path whether you tell them they shouldn't or not, you know. I mean, it's really unfortunate. I've had friends, a lot of friends that have died as a result. I thankfully had the fear of drugs put in me at a really early age, so I never had to really deal with it. I mean, I drank my face off for many years. Got that under control these days, thank God.
Leave me alone. I got better things to do. Quit picking on me. If I don't want to go to school, I got a right to do what I want. Today I'm going crazy. Would you like to come along?
Penthouse magazine, they had an expose on English punks. And they had all these pictures of punks raising babies. You know, how punks would get married and then they would have a baby and the baby would have a mohawk and, you know, it would be in a leather vest and everything. And I was thinking the other day, I wonder if anybody ever knows where those people are right now. I'd like to know what they look like now and what their kids probably in Wall Street or something, you know, totally. Because you always rebel against whatever your parent is, right? So if your parent's a punk, you're gonna be, you know, total echo kid or whatever, I don't know.
You'd start to see young kids coming in who had these preconceived notions of what a punk rocker should be, whereas originally it wasn't people who were really dressed in the typical leather jackets, chains. It was people that were like just bizarre people, and they had their own weird way of dressing, and there was guys with cowboy hats, and there was, you know, long hair, and other guys that were just, you know, it was oddballs.
When I see a punk today, it's like, you know, I helped pave the way for you, you know? And they look at me as if I'm, you know, just some old lady going down the road. You know, they have no idea about the roots in London. There was a lot of oddballs and a lot of misfits down at the Cedar Lounge. And yet some of those people that are labeled oddballs and misfits would be the nicest people you would ever have known. I mean, sometimes it's not about, you know, the exterior.
Even though 25 years have passed since the first punk rock bands started making waves in London, they're still an influence today.
They're still as popular as ever, maybe even more popular. You get the people that grew up with the scene, that are looking to replace their albums. You get the younger kids that, you know, have heard about it. Maybe they heard some of their parents' albums looking for stuff. And, you know, prices on some of the independent punk releases have gone right through the roof. Like it's the next big collectible is punk music, especially the indie stuff. Like, you know, like 63 Monroe or the Hippies or, you know, some of the other London bands. For 45s, you know, probably at the time, maybe sold 100 copies, if that. And now they're going for like big bucks. You know, we've sold 63 Monroe albums to like guys in Singapore.
63 Monroe's first record has got a high value in the punk rock collecting community. That record just generally goes for about 100 bucks. It's an expensive record. The Demix records are generally around 20 to 30 bucks. They have declined in price because they have been reissued on CD. Some of the Crash 80s record, again, the Generics, all those London independent punk rock releases all command a certain amount of money. But the Monroe record is the most widely known around the world because it did get bootlegged, and it's probably the most valuable.
It's amazing when you consider that London, Ontario's most famous citizen in the music industry is Guy Lombardo, and yet London has created a megapolis of punk, hardcore, glam punk, rock and roll in clubs like the Cedar Lounge, of course the Blue Boot as it's always used to be known. And it's just that amazing dichotomy that a conservative, you know, high-class, white-collar town like London has this amazing subculture of punks and hardcores and people that just enjoy the musical freedom that punk music provides.
People were coming from Detroit, Boston, Philadelphia, and saying that London was the best punk scene they'd ever been a part of.
We thought we were radical and different from everybody else, but we weren't. We were just kids having fun.